British author and actor based in Connecticut. She loves to write of rogues, rebels, and renegades across time and space. Elizabeth is the author of The Brass Queen, right there on the table, an award-winning fantasy set in an alternate Victorian age. To learn more about her, visit her website at www.elizabethchatworth.com. Now, without further ado, let's welcome to the stage, everyone, Elizabeth Chatsworth. As you can see, everyone, I spread the chairs out and I have these little covers just to keep everybody safe.
Thank you so much. Can everyone hear me? Oh. Now let's see if I break this. How's that? Oh, good. Excellent. Hello, I'm Elizabeth Chatsworth. I'm very pleased to meet you all today. Thank you so much for coming out in this glorious sunshiny weather that we're having. I am an author, and that is not something I ever expected to be able to say. I came to writing late in life, well, relatively late, depending on how long I live, but I was approaching my 50th birthday, and I mentioned to my husband all the things I hadn't yet done that were on my bucket list, and one of them was to write a novel. And he said, well, why don't you get on with it? And I said, well, I don't know where to start. So he suggested signing up for an online writing course, and a mere 5 years later, I'm an almost overnight success with my first novel, The Brass Queen. So thank you. So if you're ever thinking of actually starting to write a book, you never know. You might write it, and you might actually end up holding it in your hands on a sunny day like today. So give it a go. How hard could it be? So The Brass Queen is my very first novel. It's a comic fantasy set in an alternative Victorian age. So that sounds like quite a mouthful, and it is. It's been called steampunk. It's been called a gaslamp fantasy. It's been called a comic fantasy, action and adventure, Jane Austen meets H.G. Wells, and I could go on and on. I wrote it, even I'm not sure what genre it's in, so whatever you like, that's what it is. It's a bit of comedy, and a bit of adventure, a bit of romance, some aliens and airships thrown in for good measure, alternate dimensions, you name it, there's a bit of it in here. So, who is the Brass Queen? That is my wonderful heroine, Miss Constance Haltwhistle, who is a eccentric British aristocrat, as if there's another kind. She's 21 years old. She has been abandoned by her father, who's a bit of a rogue and has absconded to an alternate dimension to live with an alternate version of her late mother. And this has left Constance running a crumbling family estate in Yorkshire, England, which is where I'm from, funnily enough, because I don't want to spend too much time doing research. So it's all set in my hometown of Sheffield, England. So Constance is trying to run this estate since she was 14 years old, and she found that the wool trade didn't bring in quite enough money, so she's turned to selling illegal guns, which she invents herself. They're steampunk blunderbusses and ray guns that can blast holes through walls and occasionally into other dimensions, and she's made quite a tidy profit at this. But she has to have an underworld moniker, and that is the Brass Queen. That's what she is known by, but not to polite society. Now, unfortunately, Constance has hit an age where the legal system in England doesn't allow women to inherit property, and God forbid a single woman own her own house. And with her father missing, she's about to lose the estate to her nearest male relative, who's an evil uncle who wants to take over the estate and raze it to the ground and throw salt into the earth and fire all the servants. And Constance thinks this is generally a bad idea. So this poor gunsmith stroke aristocrat is forced to go looking for her husband. You know, that old chestnut. So off she goes to throw her own coming out ball. Whilst there, she is attacked by assassins in chapter 1. It really does start off with a bang. And she also meets a handsome American cowboy spy from Kansas who is in 1897 Sheffield on the trail of a stolen invisibility serum. So there's a lot going on. So I'm going to read a little passage of the first meeting between Constance and our almost handsome cowboy spy, Truesdale, who has had the gall to gatecrash her fancy coming out ball in a Stetson and a duster coat because he's on the search for ruffians. Now, just to set this up, Constance is expecting assassins, as she always does, so she's wearing a charming chainmail corset beneath her ball gown, which she erroneously thought no one would notice. Let's just say that the aristocrats have, and things are not going well. But she's pretty sure that her grand speech is going to save the day. So she's weaving her way through the crowd. She thinks, this is it, my one moment to shine. I'll make them all love me or die trying. Nothing and nobody will stop me from. Her face slammed into a muscular chest. She staggered back, clutching at her nose as tears welled and blinked up between her fingers. A tall, dark, almost handsome stranger gazed down at her. His eyebrows were raised over ridiculously blue eyes, bright as sapphires against shockingly tanned skin. Neatly trimmed sideburns and a square, clean-shaven jaw framed a nose that appeared to have involved itself in numerous brawls. Such a nose must assuredly belong to a ruffian. Heart-pounding, she brought up her fists, ready to punch the potential assassin. The ruffian grinned. Strike or smile. A decade of Mistress Ying's kung fu instruction kicked in. She swayed her weight onto her rear boot, leaving her front ready to smash his kneecap with as much violence as the situation required. The trespasser raised his hands in surrender. If he was an assassin, he was certainly taking his sweet time about it, and there didn't seem to be any telltale lines of hidden weapons beneath his clothing. But what odd clothing it was! The lone stranger was apparently unaware that a gentleman never wore a hat indoors, particularly not a black Stetson that seemed to have survived one too many cattle drives. His all-black ensemble would have suited a gunfighter on the cover of one of Papa's dime novels, save for his leather gloves and lack of a revolver. Did he think this was a costume party? Are you all right, miss? His voice resonated with a suspiciously American accent, deep and slow, conjuring images of deserts, mountains, and rolling plains bestrewn with bison. It's a crowded spot for that level of speed. You got somewhere better to be? She narrowed her eyes at the inadequately armed gunslinger. From your dialect, I'd venture you're from Texas, or Nevada, or Colorado, or Nebraska, or, do I get a say in this? Wyoming? He shook his head. That's 5 states down, 40 to go. You some kind of language expert? I read. Papa's 32-volume Legends of the West contained many thrilling tales, but none depicted uninvited cowboys invading white tie events in Yorkshire. If you must know, I was raised in Kansas. My mother was an army nurse, my father is a retired U.S. cavalry officer, and my siblings. I don't need your life story, thank you very much. For heaven's sake, Kansas would have been her very next guess. Why couldn't he have waited for her to get there? She scanned the crowd for quirked brows and dropped jaws at the cowboy's presence. Fortunately, the tiara and white tie set were pointedly ignoring the stranger, as the British do when foreigners exceed their comfort level to an unspeakable degree. Or perhaps they were pointedly ignoring her. Constance dropped her fist and adopted a nonchalant pose. He didn't appear dangerous. For now, it was best not to make a fuss and further disrupt the party. The American warily lowered his hands and bowed. Justice Franklin Truesdale, at your service. You can call me JF. Her hasty reading of Babette's Modern Manners on her way to the party suggested otherwise. I'll do no such thing until we're introduced by a mutual acquaintance, or by letter. Have I ever written you a letter? I don't think so, miss. If I tell you who I am, that would be an introduction, which I can't do without. A letter. Got it. A generous grin spread across his rugged face. Her heart drummed a little faster than was seemly for a well-bred lady, but she didn't have time to consort with cowboys. She leaned toward Truesdale. Look, do you mind moving out of my way? I'm heading to the stage. Aha, that explains it. You're the entertainment. I beg your pardon. Your crazy getup, the chainmail corset. He nodded toward her neckline. Sure enough, the velvet ribbon she had stitched along the top of her gown had slipped to reveal her chainmail undergarment, her last defense against the knives of her family's enemies. She groaned. Oh, for goodness sake! Constance grabbed the metal links and tried to wiggle them back down inside her gown, keeping her eyes on Truesdale. The cowboy's grin widened, but he raised his gaze to the ceiling. He studied the stars twinkling through the glass dome as Constance swore softly at the unruly links. This place must be something to see from up there. The locals call it the Crystal Octopus, presumably because of the display halls that splay out from the dome. The glow of the lamps can be seen from over a mile away. A violent shimmy sent the offending links below the velvet ribbon. Truesdale glanced down at her with a smile. Consider me impressed. She tugged the ribbon high, wincing as stitches snapped. He chuckled. Interesting armor. Boy, I sure do love carnival acts. So tell me, are you a fire eater? Or do you have a partner who flings knives at you? Is there a rotating wheel involved? She gasped at the very thought of such theatrics. Admittedly, the chainmail had stretched her green silk ball gown to the bursting point over her prominent bosom and cruelly cinched waist. The tautness added a burlesque flair to what should have been the most stylish ensemble of her life. But a fire eater? Heavens, no! Sir, I'm no entertainer. As you're clearly not an invited guest, I suggest that you leave before the authorities are called. No need for that now. I'm here with... You'll find the exit to your left. Sir, she fixed him with her sternest stare, the one that made her stable boy stop playing cards and saddle her horse in record time. He blinked and stepped out of her way. She swept by the interloper. She'd have words with the security staff about letting in undesirables. Thank you. Well, that's it really. That's the whole reading. So if you'd like to read more, this is a book that you can purchase, believe it or not. There's a large print edition, a paperback, a hardcover. It's available on this very table behind me, but also at Barnes & Noble and Amazon and all the places where good and bad books are sold. So I hope you may find The Glass Queen in your future, and thank you so much for your time today.